In the town of Paradise, Kevin drives the school bus through the streets, dropping kids off at their homes, one by one. He then drives the bus back to the depot, where he begs dispatcher Ruby for extra shifts to cover his late father's unpaid medical bills. Unfortunately, Ruby has nothing available for him right now. When Kevin gets home, his phone rings. It's the vet calling with the latest test results on his dog. The cancer has spread too far, and the vet tells Kevin it's time to let his dog go. Kevin gathers his aging dog and heads inside, only to learn from his mother that his son Sean refused to go to school that day. Kevin scolds Sean for skipping school, but Sean insists he's sick and cranks up loud music to drown out his father's lecture. Kevin loses his temper and yells, and Sean fires back that he hates his father and wishes he were dead. Shattered by his son's words, Kevin quietly slips out of the room to cry where no one can see him. Later that day, Kevin takes his dog to the vet and holds him close as he is gently and mercifully put to sleep. The following morning, powerful winds pick up and knock a piece of equipment loose from a transmission tower. The falling debris sends sparks cascading down that quickly reach the dry grass below. Driven by the gusting wind, the sparks rapidly ignite into a fire that begins spreading across the land. A trucker passing on the highway spots the growing blaze and immediately dials the emergency line. 2 fire trucks race to the scene, only to discover that the main road doesn't reach the fire's location. Their only option is a dangerously narrow mountain road not built for vehicles their size, forcing them to inch along with extreme caution. Every minute the trucks are delayed gives the fire more time to grow and spread further. Unable to find a way in from this road either, the crews are forced to turn back and search for a new entry point. Meanwhile, Kevin heads off to work and keeps texting Sean throughout his route, but his son refuses to respond. After finishing his route, Kevin's mother calls to say Sean has been vomiting and has a fever. He really had been telling the truth. Kevin needs to pull over for gas and promises his mother he'll call her back soon. Unfortunately, a long queue at the pump eats up far more of his time than he can afford. Ruby calls Kevin to reprimand him for the delay and orders him to get the bus back to the depot immediately. As Kevin speeds back toward the depot, he notices a thick column of smoke climbing into the sky in the distance. He makes a quick stop at the pharmacy for medicine and, just as he's leaving, his ex-wife calls him. She tells Kevin that Sean wants to come stay with her, but she's heading out of town with her new boyfriend that very night. Kevin promises to sort things out and ends the call. Back at the fire, more firefighters gather to assess what they're up against. The blaze has already burned through roughly 300 acres, and the relentless wind is now driving it down into the canyon. A small community of about 800 residents nearby needs to be warned, though Paradise seems far enough away to be safe for now. Unfortunately, a second fire erupts just 3 miles from the first and triggers a power outage across the area. A firefighter who reaches the small town reports heavy smoke and wind-driven embers arriving from 5 miles away. The fire is spreading far faster than anyone anticipated. New ignition points are erupting in multiple locations at once, and the residents of the small town begin to panic. The firefighter on the ground is losing visibility rapidly as smoke thickens all around him. The fire chief realizes all these blazes are part of one massive inferno and calls for an immediate evacuation. The firefighter sprints through the streets, pounding on doors and rushing residents out of their homes as fast as possible. Some residents are so terrified that they drive recklessly, and cars keep colliding with one another in the chaos. Anyone without a vehicle of their own is loaded into the firefighter's truck. The flames are already close enough that several residents have suffered burns. Once everyone has a ride, the firefighter leads the townspeople out in a convoy, guiding them towards safety. Air tankers finally appear and begin dropping fire retardant across the burning area. But the fierce gusts make it nearly impossible to aim the retardant drops accurately. The chief orders the tankers to make another run while he frantically contacts neighboring cities to request additional fire trucks. The convoy struggles to advance. Visibility has dropped to almost nothing, and the road is too narrow to avoid brushing the flames. More collisions bring the convoy to a halt, and desperate people abandon their vehicles to continue fleeing on foot. As the crowd scrambles toward the creek, one man bursts into flames and a neighbor quickly smothers the fire by throwing a blanket over him. The firefighter calls desperately for backup over the radio as a deadly burnover becomes unavoidable. Fire trucks trying to push into the area keep running into obstacles on the road and are eventually unable to move any further. The air tankers complete a second run, but the retardant is having absolutely no impact on the raging blaze. As the burnover finally sweeps over the creek, the firefighter shouts for everyone to submerge themselves in the water just as flames roar directly overhead. The chief and his team are gripped with dread after losing contact, but the firefighter finally checks in a few agonizing minutes later. Everyone survived, but a number of people have sustained serious burn injuries. The firefighter warns them that the fire is moving at a critical speed. It will reach paradise after all. Back on the road, a massive flock of birds fleeing the fire sweeps across Kevin's path and nearly causes him to crash. He swerves into the other lane to give way to police cars and fire trucks and notices the smoke is growing steadily darker and heavier. He tries calling Sean again while driving but still can't get through. Kevin leaves a voicemail for Sean, apologizing for their earlier argument. He also promises to bring Sean the medicine as soon as he finishes work. As helicopters arrive to assist the firefighting crews, the Paradise Town Hall receives evacuation orders for the east side of town just before the phone lines go dead. But when officials attempt to broadcast the evacuation alert, they discover the emergency notification system has also failed. The air tankers continue making passes over the fire, but their drops are having little practical effect. Both the firefighters on the ground and the helicopter crews realize the wind has grown too violent for safe aerial operations. The fire surges across the canyon and there is nothing left that can stop its advance. Inside a Paradise school, Teacher Mary does her best to keep her frightened students calm. The principal, no longer willing to wait for official word, tells the teachers to start sending the children home. Some parents are already arriving to collect their children while the teachers scramble to phone the remaining families. Back on the road, Kevin's ex-wife calls again to tell him that Sean keeps reaching out to her instead of his own father. Kevin pulls over to take the call properly, but his ex simply tells him to put Sean's happiness first, because Sean doesn't want to live with him at all. After the call ends, Kevin leaves Sean a voicemail telling him he's on his way home. As Kevin makes a U-turn and aggravates several nearby drivers, Ruby radios all bus drivers to head west, reminding them that some still have children on board. Back at the school, the principal finally receives the official evacuation orders. With the alert system down, town hall staff are calling anyone with a radio to help spread the evacuation message. Mary quickly phones her best friend and asks her to pick up Mary's own child from a different school, since her husband is away. With many students still waiting to be collected, the principal calls the bus depot to ask for help. Ruby gets on the radio to her drivers and calls for someone to volunteer for the school run. Every other driver claims their bus is already full, leaving Kevin as the only one who can answer the call. Meanwhile, firefighters finally locate a way into the fire zone and begin battling the blaze, though it promises to be a long and grueling effort. Kevin weaves through heavy traffic, pulls up to the school, and rushes inside, urging everyone to move fast. When they step outside, ash is already falling over the town and everyone pulls their hoods up against it. Just as the final children are boarding, a mother rushes up and collects her son before the bus pulls away. Mary wants to stay behind and help secure the building, but Kevin insists she come along because he can't manage the children on his own. Once they're moving, Mary pulls out the school's official evacuation map and shows Kevin the designated route. Kevin shakes his head. Traffic on that road is already crawling, but Mary insists they stick to the official plan. As the bus crawls to a halt in traffic, firefighters elsewhere observe the gridlock on the roads and fear that many people will not escape in time. The command team sets down near an exhibition center that has been converted into the main incident headquarters. The chief pushes to evacuate the entire town rather than just the east side, though some of his men argue the resulting gridlock would block their own fire trucks. But with the fire already roaring down the canyon, the chief concludes they have no alternative. The chief also gives the order to cut all power to the town. Fire trucks and police cars continue racing past the bus, making the children anxious, and Mary calmly tells them those vehicles are there to protect them. While Mary is busy calming the kids, Kevin quietly steers the bus off the planned evacuation route to assess the situation himself. Mary panics and snaps at him, but Kevin points at the advancing flames and says staying in the traffic jam will get them all killed. He makes another turn and finds a road with far lighter traffic. Though flames burn along one side with firefighters rushing to contain them, Kevin floors it and barely threads the bus past the oncoming fire trucks with no room to spare. Back at the depot, a red alert sounds and all employees evacuate immediately. Ruby stays behind a little longer trying to reach Kevin by radio, but with the radio system also down, she eventually has no choice but to flee as well. On the bus, Kevin and Mary share a quiet moment, talking about growing up in paradise and the challenges of raising a teenager. The fire is spreading with terrifying speed, growing larger and more ferocious with every passing minute. Through East Paradise, firefighters battle valiantly with their hoses, but the inferno is overwhelming them. Even the hospital's cardiology wing has caught fire, forcing staff to rush patients to safety while trying to save the building. All aerial operations have been suspended. The combination of wind and smoke has made flying completely impossible. Flames are now encroaching onto the roads themselves, worsening the gridlock and cutting off the fire trucks from entire sections of the town. As more residents ditch their cars and flee on foot, the chief orders his crew to clear the abandoned vehicles blocking the roads. On the bus, Kevin grips the wheel with white knuckles, trembling with frustration as the traffic comes to a complete standstill. He tries Sean's number again and again, but the cell signal is completely dead. With all communication lines down, Kevin realizes with dread that his family may have no idea that evacuation orders have been issued. Without warning, a house just off the road explodes into flames. The children erupt in panic, and Mary races down the aisle to pull them away from the windows. Panicked drivers all around them begin lurching forward erratically, completely blocking the bus from advancing. Desperate, Kevin asks Mary to take the wheel, then climbs off to confront the police officers who are failing to redirect traffic while a fire truck waits to get through. After a useless standoff with the officers, Kevin decides to direct the traffic himself. He waves the cars into the other lane and successfully opens a way through for both the fire truck and the bus. Mary keeps the children calm aboard the bus as the fire truck at last begins to move forward. Mary eases the bus far enough forward to break free from the gridlock and hands the wheel back to Kevin. They finally pick up some speed, but their hearts sink when they reach the designated meeting point and find it already engulfed in flames. Kevin and Mary step off the bus to search for survivors, but the area is completely deserted. Mary urges Kevin to head for the evacuation center before the children grow any more distressed. Mary hurries back onto the bus and discovers one small girl crouched underneath a seat, trembling with fear. Mary coaxes the girl out with a gentle embrace while Kevin climbs back into the driver's seat and they set off again. At the exhibition center, the chief is stunned to learn that only 8,000 people have been evacuated. 30,000 are still trapped. The situation grows increasingly desperate as the fire tightens its grip on the town from all sides. Every second counts as the bus crew races to find a path through the encroaching flames. The chief identifies the propane facilities as the most dangerous threat and makes them the top priority. Live power lines are snapping and falling across roads, and a team of firefighters is sent out to cut through them. The chief tracks down the power plant supervisor, who admits they've shut down the automatic lines but haven't yet reached the manual override switches. Furious, the chief tears into the supervisor and sends him to fix it. His firefighters need to be fighting flames, not dealing with power cables. Back on the road, the bus is once again mired in a grinding traffic jam. Kevin spots a clear patch of sky to the southwest and decides that is the direction they need to head. There are two routes. One is shorter but packed with treacherous hairpin bends that a bus might not survive, and the other is longer but manageable. They have no real choice, and Kevin steers the bus onto the longer route. Some of the children realize Mary doesn't actually know where their parents are, but she promises they will all be reunited soon. Another power line crashes to the ground, sending dangerous sparks exploding in every direction. Kevin has been watching the poles carefully and swerves out of the way just in time, but panicked drivers all around him are also swerving wildly, forcing him to dodge both the falling cables and the cars. As the falling cables topple the utility poles as well, Kevin must execute rapid, sharp turns to navigate around the wreckage. Residents abandoning their cars and fleeing on foot create yet another obstacle for Kevin to steer around. Kevin remains locked in focus behind the wheel, steering the bus through the mayhem with fierce determination. The road ahead grows more treacherous with every passing second. The children scream as sparks shower dangerously close to the bus, and Kevin is forced to veer hard left when a toppled pole completely blocks the road. The windshield begins cracking under the heat as Kevin deliberately rams through a fence to reach the southwest road faster. But the flames in this area are even more ferocious, and the road is just as jammed because every other driver had the exact same idea. Firefighters work their hoses with everything they have, but they are barely making a dent in the inferno. When a man outside the bus suddenly catches fire, Mary quickly shields the children's eyes to spare them from the horrifying sight. Suddenly, a group of looters materializes in the road and begins ransacking an abandoned truck. The looters spread across the road and Mary immediately tells the children to move back from the windows. An armed man forces the bus door open a crack, and Kevin kicks it over and over to drive him back. At that exact moment, Mary spots an opening in the left lane, and Kevin jerks the bus into it, breaking free from the standstill. Their only remaining option now is to find the dangerous narrow mountain road. At the evacuation center, a steady stream of cars pours in as thousands of emergency tents are erected for the displaced residents. Ruby arrives safely and accounts for all her bus drivers, everyone except Kevin. When anxious parents approach her, Ruby has to tell them that the children were evacuated from the school but are still out there somewhere on Kevin's bus. The parents erupt in anger and worry, but Ruby stands firmly behind Kevin and urges everyone to trust him and hold on to hope. On the bus, the children are suffering badly, overheated, dehydrated, and barely holding it together. Mary distributes their homework papers for the kids to use as fans, though it does almost nothing to ease the heat. Suddenly, smoke starts pouring through the air conditioning vents, and Kevin is forced to shut the system down completely. It will make the bus even hotter, but being able to breathe clean air is far more critical. When one of the girls begins showing signs of heat stroke, Mary pleads with Kevin to stop so she can search for water. She steps off alone and tells Kevin not to hesitate to drive away if the fire gets too close. Mary sprints through the choking smoke and falling ash, checking every building and parked RV she can find. Kevin's dread surges as he watches the fire inch toward a nearby gas tank, and he starts screaming at Mary to hurry back. Mary finally forces open an RV door and finds several water bottles, which she snatches and carries back toward the bus. When she spots desperate survivors running nearby, she ducks down and holds still so they don't see the water and try to take it. At that very moment, the gas tank detonates with a thunderous blast, and the children erupt in tears, convinced their teacher has been killed. Kevin screams her name over and over, and Mary uses his shouts to navigate back through the blinding smoke. They pile back onto the bus and tear off, only for another small explosion to go off in the grass right beside them. Kevin swerves sharply to avoid the blast, but a fresh wall of flames rises up ahead and blocks their path entirely. With the children shrieking, Kevin throws the bus into reverse and executes a frantic series of maneuvers as flames erupt on all sides. After an agonizing struggle, they finally spot the exit route and take it. Minutes later, Kevin inches the bus along the treacherous narrow mountain road while Mary watches his blind spots and calls out directions. At the exhibition center, the command team realizes with horror that the fire is now heading directly toward those same winding roads. With nothing left to deploy in that direction, everyone still trapped there will have to save themselves. Kevin and Mary spot a group of people on the road moving toward them. Heading in the opposite direction, Kevin stops to speak with them and learns that fire has already crossed the ridge just ahead. Kevin warns them that the fire behind him is even worse, but the group refuses to turn back and continues on their way. Kevin walks to the ridge to see for himself, and is devastated to find flames stretching in every direction, as far as the eye can see. He returns to the bus with a heavy heart and tells Mary the terrible truth. They are completely surrounded and must shelter inside. Mary fights to stay composed for the children's sake, but as she sinks into a seat, she can no longer stop herself from crying. Kevin tears his shirt into strips and instructs Mary to soak them in water so they can serve as makeshift breathing filters, telling her to move the children to the back of the bus away from the vents. He then begins taping up every window on the bus to keep the smoke out. At the exhibition center, word arrives that the fire hydrants across town are rapidly losing pressure. Containing the fire is now a lost cause, so command makes the painful decision to pull firefighters back from the flames and focus entirely on saving lives. The chief steps before a small press gathering and delivers a blunt declaration. Fires are growing worse every year, and he calls government officials fools for failing to act. On the bus, a despairing Mary finds herself wondering whether she should let the children fall asleep so they might slip away peacefully if the fire reaches them. She quietly mourns never having left paradise to explore the wider world. Kevin, in contrast, is haunted by the 28 years he spent away from home and the fact that he wasn't there when his father passed away. Tears run down his face as he realizes he has been repeating that same painful absence with his own son, Sean. Flames suddenly appear right next to the bus, and Kevin grabs the fire extinguisher, sprinting to put them out. When more fire erupts behind the vehicle, Mary takes over the extinguisher while Kevin beats at the flames with his jacket. The extinguisher runs completely dry, yet the massive wall of fire continues its relentless advance. Kevin orders Mary back inside and keeps fighting the fire alone with his jacket until the flames sear his hand. Watching the surrounding trees collapse in flames, Kevin sprints back to the bus and tells Mary there is only one way out. They have to drive straight through the inferno. He turns the key and the bus refuses to start, so Kevin leaps out to check the engine. The fire is nearly on top of them as Kevin frantically works the engine, until Mary suddenly gets it running from the driver's seat. Kevin sprints back inside and they launch forward at full speed. With the children shrieking, Kevin sends the bus hurtling through the inferno at full throttle, wrenching the wheel left and right to dodge the largest walls of flame. The bus plows through fallen branches, abandoned cars, and pockets of fire, yet Kevin never falters, pushing the accelerator even harder. After several terrifying minutes swallowed by heat and darkness, the bus bursts into a clear, open area outside of town and sunlight floods back in. Everyone on board dissolves into tears, clutching each other in overwhelming relief. The bus finally rolls into the evacuation center, and word spreads instantly that the missing children have arrived. Frantic parents swarm the bus the moment it stops, desperate to be reunited with their children. Mary tries to speak with the parents but stops mid-sentence when she spots her own son standing in the crowd. Kevin pulls aside an evacuation worker and asks about his son and his mother, but neither name appears on the victim list. Kevin rushes to the medical tents and is flooded with relief when he finds his mother there, who tells him their neighbor rescued her. She explains that Sean had slipped away before the evacuation orders arrived, choosing to go stay with his mother. With a heavy but accepting heart, Kevin finally acknowledges that his son is safer and happier living with his ex-wife. Many days later, Kevin makes his way back to Paradise to see what is left of the town he once called home. His house has been reduced to nothing but rubble and cinders. Yet amid the wreckage he manages to uncover a photograph of himself and Sean. At that moment his ex-wife's car pulls up nearby, and Sean jumps out to run into his father's arms.